That's a huge difference, because thinking that we're separate causes a lot of difficulty and a lot of pain. As Krishna says in the Gita, get away from this world of sukha dukkha dham, this world of pleasure and pain. Now, Yoganandaji said that God produces this world for our entertainment and education. But then he went on to say, how few are either entertained or educated. As we live in this world, especially as we have attachments to things in this world, attachments to that we want this condition and we don't want that condition. We want to be rich, we don't want to be poor. We want to be loved, we don't want to be disliked. All thousands of conditions. As long as we're attached to those conditions, then because the world is a world of sukha dukkha dham, some of those will be fulfilled and some will not be fulfilled. And if we say, oh, wonderful, 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 Master has fulfilled my desire, he gave me a parking place, which was an example that Swami used often, especially when he taught in San Francisco, where parking was very difficult, but it's true now all over the world. There are only 3 empty parking places in all the world, and they're hard to find. That's a joke. But we think that if something good happens, oh, the Guru fulfilled that for me. He doesn't care whether we have these little things or don't have these little things. What he comes for is to help us with our spiritual freedom. So he's like a spiritual doctor. He knows, God knows that we suffer. God knows that we are unfulfilled. God knows that we're filled with desires. God knows everything because he is everything. One time when our son was about, 6 years old, he taught me a good spiritual lesson. So I don't know what started the conversation, but I was telling him that God is everywhere and in everything and knows everything. And he said, Daddy, does that mean that if a little ant on the other side of the world crawls in his hole that God knows that the ant did that? I said, yes, if God thinks about it, then he knows. And our little son, 6 years old, said, why does God have to think about it if he is that ant? And I said, yes, of course, you're right. He doesn't. God is in everything. Divine Mother is everything. And so she knows our suffering. She knows our attachments. She knows our desires. And so gradually, at first, we were so entranced with trying to achieve those desires that she just says, okay. Yogananda said, it's like a donkey. If you want the donkey to move, one way to do that is to tie a stick on the top of its head with a carrot hanging down from the stick. And the donkey sees that carrot and moves toward it. And of course, the carrot moves a little farther away. And so the donkey keeps going and going and going. Well, Divine Mother has a little stick with a carrot. But that carrot may look like wealth, or it may look like a relationship, or it may look like any of hundreds of thousands of desires. And so we chase it and we chase it and we chase it. And maybe, if we never got that carrot, we would tire of the game and give up. So God, every once in a while, or half the time, lets us munch on that carrot. But does that end the donkey's hunger? Of course not. Does getting wealth end the hunger for something more? Of course not. Everything that we want outside of ourselves, even if we attain it, falls short of our expectation. And so you can have, Master said that he had a disciple who earned $1 million. In those days, that meant a lot more than it means now. So it would be like having $10 million or $20 million now. And Master said, well, now you have all the money that you need. You don't need to work, and you can spend time in meditation and seeking God. Man said, oh no, a rival of mine has twice as much, and I'll never rest until I have more than he does. So there's no satisfying desires. Desires ever fed are never dead. And so God knows all of these things because we are that little ant, and he knows when we crawl in a hole or when we don't crawl in a hole. He knows the desires, and he knows also that those desires in the world of duality, sukha dukkha dham, will never be completely satisfied. And so he sends a spiritual doctor, and that spiritual doctor is someone who, like Yogananda, ultimately is completely in tune with and completely self-aware. So Yogananda knows that he doesn't have a separate existence, unlike us, but he knows. So God, for those great souls who are in that state of consciousness, sends them to help us. And so let's think of Yogananda like a spiritual doctor. And like any doctor, he has to advertise. And so how does he advertise? Well, his main advertising tool is the autobiography of a yogi. And so millions and millions of those books have been printed. How many in this room had their first contact with autobiography of a yogi? At least half, maybe more. And everywhere we go, it's the same story. So you picked up one of Master's advertising flyers, and you read it, and you were attracted to that because the state of consciousness that's described in there is what your soul is hungering for. And so you were attracted to that. And most people read that, or they read a little bit, or they hear about it, and that's the only contact that they have. You have had enough of a spiritual past in past lives to, when you read that, wanted to act on it and wanted to do something about it. And so that's why you're sitting in this room today. It's why I'm standing in this room today. It's because when we read that, it so entranced us that we really wanted to act on it. And so the Master comes as a spiritual doctor, and those who want to really follow through, they go to a doctor, and the doctor gives them a prescription. Now, Master said that some people go to a doctor, the doctor gives them a prescription, and they come home and they frame it in a frame and they hang it on the wall. Oh, the doctor gave me this prescription. The prescription is something that's meant to be, the medicine is meant to be consumed. So in this case, it isn't medicine, it's meditation. The meditation is meant to be acted on, to be consumed. And so those of us who want freedom, want somehow to overcome this spiritual illness that we have of never, ever being satisfied, always being filled with some sort of a desire, that hunger in us to end that endless process causes us to come to the Guru and to ask, what should I do? What can I do? Right now I'm dealing with a little shoulder issue where I have some impingement in the shoulder. And so I'm going to a friend who's a very, very fine physical therapist, and she's breaking up the attachments in the shoulder. Well, it's the same thing. That's a physical process, but we have impingements in our consciousness. And so we go to the consciousness therapist who starts working on us to break up those attachments. And when we go through that protocol with them, then we begin to get spiritually well. Now, Master, what is our part in this? Well, obviously it is, once we have made that contact, once we know that this is what we want, then not to hang the prescription up on the wall, not to take the autobiography of a yogi and put it on a bookshelf, but to start following what the teachings are. And so in this center and hundreds of centers around the world that are of Ananda, you can come and learn the basic teachings or the basic prescription that Master gave. Meditate, do energization, do Hong Saw. It's not a complicated prescription. The complication is that it does take effort and it takes some time. And because we have a kind of a life that's complicated, we end up not having our spiritual benefit be the top priority. We're still caught in the world of Sukha Dukkha Dham, and other priorities squeeze in ahead of that, ahead of the spiritual priorities. So as long as we seek our fulfillment outside of ourselves, our life is going to get complicated and stay complicated. And so that complication will make us strive harder and harder and harder to fulfill something that ultimately is just a carrot hanging in front of our nose. So the Guru comes in order to help us get over that cycle. And these teachings begin gradually to work in such a way that we find fulfillment not outside of ourselves, where it can never be found, but inside of ourselves. And when we find the fulfillment that we're seeking inside of ourselves, then we don't have to go anywhere to seek it. We have arrived at the destination. And then we find, and I have seen thousands and thousands of different devotees over the course of the lifetime that I've led. And the more that they find that fulfillment within, the calmer they are. It doesn't mean that their karma goes away, because in many cases, a deep devotee is inwardly calm, inwardly much less attached, and inwardly wanting to serve the Guru. In many cases, they want the karma to be done with, and so the karma comes even faster and heavier. But that's the choice of the soul to get beyond that. But there are many cases that we have heard of where people don't consciously make the connection with the Guru, with Yogananda, and yet Yogananda is looking after them. And they're beautiful stories. We were just told a story a month or a month and a half ago from a friend who lives in Chennai and is a doctor. And she said that she and her husband, I'm not sure what the husband's occupation is, she's a doctor. There was a cleaning woman who was in the hospital that that she was working in, and she just felt very strongly that she should help this cleaning woman. And so she would bring extra food and give it to her. She would bring clothing that they didn't need and give it to her, and constantly was giving various things to this woman. She didn't know why, she just felt the desire to do it. I'm sure many of you have had that kind of a feeling. You make a connection with somebody, you just want to help them. Well, in this case, this woman doctor often asked this woman to come to their house to have tea and because of the difference in status, the woman said, no. Finally, after 5 years, this woman said, all right, I'll come to your house. And so she came to the house and came in, and there was a picture of Yogananda on the wall, and she pronamed and started crying. And the doctor woman said, do you know this man? She said, yes. 5 years ago, my husband died. And the night before he died, he gave me a copy of Autobiography of a Yogi with the picture on it. And he said, this man will take care of you. And so for 5 years, Master, using the willingness and the heart energy of this woman doctor, was taking care of this woman. And now they have a deep, wonderful connection. Now it's come to the surface. But Master will use us as his channel to bring goodness into the world if we want. And so attunement with the Guru is to be willing to act as a channel. But then it isn't enough just to be passively willing. We have to be actively willing. How do we be actively willing? Well, the simplest thing is that we meditate, and Yogananda taught that if you meditate, and especially in meditation, visualize the eyes of, in this case, Master, that the visual, because the eyes are the windows of the soul, the visualization of the eyes will help attune your consciousness to the consciousness of Yogananda. So inwardly in meditation, and that's the most important way, because we can have general guidance by reading the autobiography. We can have general guidance by coming to a center, learning to meditate, reading Yogananda's books, listening to his voice. All of that is very, very important, because that's taking the medicine. That's the prescription that Yogananda has given us. And if we don't take that, then the doctor says, well, I already gave you a prescription. I'm not going to give you another one until you take that one. And so we have to do all of those things outwardly. If you know meditation, if you have received meditation techniques, especially kriya, then you have to do those things. Because if you don't, then Master doesn't get upset. It's not like the doctor is angry with the patient because the patient doesn't take the medicine. No doctor is that way. He feels badly for the patient because he knows that if the patient would take the medicine, the patient would get well. But if we've received a meditation technique, or if we've received kriya, and we somehow have the delusion that our life is too busy to take that medicine, then Master just waits, God just waits until we feel enough illness, we feel enough pain in the impingement in the muscles in the joint in our shoulder that we go to the therapist. So God doesn't judge. God just has the law of karma do the work for us, for him, for her, for us. And so that law of karma works in such a way that if we act out of alignment with universal truths, we feel pain. And eventually that pain gets to be sufficient, so we say, I don't want this anymore, and then we begin to do our kriyas. For those of you who have had kriya, and even for those who don't, Yogananda said that a single practice of kriya spiritually is the equivalent of a whole year of living. So think of how much you go through in a year. Think of how much ups and downs, how much getting dunked into the ocean of sukha dukkha dham that you've had so far in your life. So if you're 30 years old, or if you're 60 years old, or you're 70 years old, if you do 30 kriyas, or 60 kriyas, or 70 kriyas, you get as much spiritual benefit as having gone through all of that turmoil and outer difficulty and so on. So does it make sense to say, oh, I'm too busy going through the turmoil to do a kriya to avoid going through the turmoil? No, of course not. But somehow we get caught up in those little delusions. So to continue deepening our attunement with the Guru, first we do what we can outwardly. We do the practices that he's given us. We do the techniques that we have been taught. We do all of those things that we can in an outward way. We read his books, we listen to his voice, we communicate and associate with others who are disciples. And all of that is extremely, extremely important to do. But even more important is our inner attunement. And that comes in deep meditation and looking into his eyes, or offering ourselves into his vibration and receiving back the love and the joy and the wisdom that he has inwardly with intuition and attunement. So it happens in meditation, and it also happens throughout the day. Every time you're at a decision point, if you can remember to ask Master, what should I do? Then his advice to you will grow stronger and stronger. We have many people that do this practice, but there's a man who runs the Expanding Light, which is our guest facilities at Ananda Village. He has a big picture of Master behind him, behind his desk on the wall. And he has trained himself that every time that he doesn't know what to do, a manager of a big facility has to make lots of decisions. Every time he doesn't know what to do, he's got a swivel chair. He swivels his chair around and says, Master, what should I do? And often he gets an immediate answer. And sometimes he gets a delayed answer. But he gets an answer. But that act of turning toward the Guru, here he does it physically, but most of the time we just do it mentally, turning toward the Guru and saying, Master, what should I do? As you do that, Master will speak to you more and more clearly, more and more powerfully, and he will begin to guide your life. And then, if you act in tune, act according to that internal guidance that you get, then that attunement will change your life, because he knows his unity with God, and he doesn't have the yearnings and desires that other people do. And so as we attune our consciousness to his, then our consciousness becomes like his. Swami Kriyananda began toward the end of his life because he powerfully practiced this kind of teaching. We were with him one time. He, of course, spent 3.5 years with Yogananda. But that was, in 1948 to 1952 when Master left the body. And so it was a lot of years previously. Most people would say, well, Yogananda left the body and that's the end of the relationship. Swami was constantly connecting to Yogananda. One time we were with him, we were walking around his little garden at Ananda Village in California, and he just stopped. And he said, oh, that's what he meant. We said, what do you mean, Swami? He said, oh, I was remembering an incident with Master. At this time it was 60 or 65 years earlier. Said, oh, I was remembering an incident with Master, and he was talking to someone, but I remember that he raised his eyebrow, and that raising of the eyebrow meant that what he was saying to that person was meant for me. And so he was constantly in his mind and in his heart, constantly referring his consciousness to masters for guidance. And toward the end of his life, he said, I no longer know where Swami Kriyananda ends and Yogananda begins, because that unity had become so clear. And having that unity, he became a sounding board. When you have a sitar, you have the main strings, but underneath that you have strings, so you play the main strings and the strings underneath resonate. So he was resonating in harmony with Master's consciousness. Master said that I particularly, of the 8 qualities of God, I particularly express love and joy and wisdom. And because Swami resonated in that way, he expressed love and joy and wisdom, especially, many of other qualities too. And one could say that Ananda Sangha resonates with those qualities especially. Divine friendship and love expressed, this beautiful study of the teachings, and ultimately joy. So if we keep attuning our consciousness to the Guru will indeed begin to guide us. The more we attune, the more individualized and particularly he will guide us, until perhaps at the end of our lives, like Swami, we can say, I no longer know where I leave off and Yogananda begins.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone, and good morning to those watching online. Today is a special morning. This is our first time coming to this beautiful new center in Noida. I think we've been at 3 or 4 other ones before, but this now I think you have found a home that will be yours for some time. And so we're so happy that we were able to come today. As Abhishek said, we're leaving this coming week. We go back to U.S. We've been in India for nearly 3 months, traveling and sharing with devotees. And so this is our last satsang in India. And in a sense, there's so much to say, and certainly not enough time to say it all. But we say this to you on behalf of all the devotees whose lives who have been entwined with us during these many months in many different places throughout India. We are so grateful for the deep, sincere interest in Master's teachings, the gracious, gracious welcome you have given Jyotish and I and the many acharyas throughout India. And really, we come to India every year for about 3 months. And it's really the highlight of our lives, of our year, because we get to, it's almost as though we have had a lifetime of attunement to the Guru and living the spiritual path. And then we come to India, and it's as though Master said, share what you've learned on the deepest possible level you know how. And so for us, it's a great blessing. Right? And we are very grateful to all of you. Once Swami Kriyananda Swamiji was giving a discourse, and he said something that puzzled me, and I couldn't accept it at first. He said, you all thank me for what I've given you, but please understand, I need you just as much as you need me. And I thought, what does he mean by that? And he was meaning, if I didn't have receptive people to share these teachings with, I wouldn't be fulfilling my own dharma in this lifetime. So when we come, as we were saying earlier, in a way the subject of discipleship is the most important of any topic we could discuss, because it is only through the guru-disciple relationship that the soul finds freedom. There is no other way. There is no other vehicle. You think, I can do it on my own. We're not saying Yogananda is the only guru. Of course not. There are so many great souls who have come to show people the way out of delusion. But we speak of our way because it's what we've been trained in. But there are many, many other wonderful ways. I was reading an interview yesterday about an interview with the American teacher Ram Dass, who was a disciple of Neem Karoli Baba, and it inspired many people in the West. And people asked him, are you my guru? They asked Ram Dass. And he said, Neem Karoli Baba Maharajji, he is the fisherman, and you are the fish, and I am only the worm, the little bait that catches the fish. And so the great masters come, and they come to catch us, to take us out of the ocean of delusion, out of the ocean of suffering, sukha dukkha dham, and to bring us to the freedom that our souls are deeply, deeply craving. And the more you are on the spiritual path, the deeper that craving becomes, because you realize you have touches of God's presence. You taste the joy, you taste the peace, you taste the freedom from compulsive behavior. I like this, I don't like this. We were having dinner recently with some dear friends, and they with their children, and their children are little and a very beautiful family, very fine people. But we were having dinner, and the little girl was saying, I like this, I don't like this, I don't want this, I don't like that. And I was just thinking, how many lifetimes we go, I like this, I don't like this, and on and on and on, until we grow up and we say, what does it matter what I like or what I don't like? What all that matters is my attunement with you, God. And so how do we deepen that attunement? That's really the question. First of all, as Jyotish was saying, we need to ask ourselves the question. We need to understand, who is the Guru? Is he a person? Is he a picture? Is he a murti? Is he a book? Is he a tape that we can listen to? No. The Guru is so much more than all of this. Each soul, as is released, one might say, as a spark of the divine consciousness. And the true Guru, the Satguru, is one who through many, many lifetimes of effort has finally realized who and what they really are. In essence, they are not different from what we are, but they have traveled the journey and they have reached the goal. Yogananda said he could remember his lifetime, all of his lifetimes, but he could remember back to when he was a lump of coal and a diamond. A diamond. He could remember when he was simply a mineral. And then the evolution from the mineral to the plant to the animal to the human. And as Master says, the human is uniquely created. Human beings are uniquely created with our cerebral spinal system, with the chakras, with the potential for God realization. Unique we are in that. Other animals don't have that. Plants don't have it. And so the Guru is one who has traveled the path before us. And they have, Yoganandaji said, I killed Yogananda long ago. No one dwells in this bodily temple now but God. And that's what the Guru is. And Swami used the image, and it's very helpful. God is like the cosmic source of energy, and we are like the little receiving station. But for us to receive that cosmic energy, we need a transformer, something that can bring that energy down into a form we can receive it. Through teachings, through writings, but mostly through consciousness. And the Guru is always calling us, and it isn't random. The Guru-disciple relationship is God-ordained. You can't say, oh, well, I will choose this Guru, and maybe I don't like him for a while, I'll go that Guru. You can shop, you can go here and there, but there is one God-ordained Guru for each of us. And I'm not saying, please, I'm not proselytizing. I'm not saying you must follow our way. But once you make that connection with the Guru, that is, once you realize it, because the connection's always there. We don't make the connection. We discover that connection. I remember, maybe some of you have heard this, one of my earliest memories was just being quite a little girl, maybe 2 or 3. I didn't know how to read yet, but I was looking at a magazine in my parents' home, couldn't read, but I remember seeing a picture of Yogananda. It must have been an advertisement for autobiography of a yogi in the West. And I looked at that picture and I was absolutely intrigued. I remember as a little girl, is that a man? Is that a woman? Who is that person? And then the life goes by and the little breadcrumbs take you down the path until finally you find autobiography, you find a way to learn his teachings. But the Guru is the fisherman, always trying to bring us, to catch us. And so it's not, we limit him if we think, oh, he said this, he did this. Really, it's his consciousness, the overarching consciousness of his unity with God. That's what they have to give us. That vibration of what does it feel like? What is it, the consciousness, if there is no longer any sense of separation? And we get little tastes of it, and it draws us on and on. But what is our part in this? What is the disciple's part? Once we take that step, there's so many, many aspects to it. One, of course, is to follow the Guru's discipline. This is to do what the Guru asks of us, and on an outward level, to practice the techniques he's given, but more even than the techniques, to try to align ourselves with his consciousness. Begin each day with asking, let my words reflect your vibration, let my thoughts, let my actions. And the hard part is, when you feel you're off, when you feel like, this is not what Guruji would do. He would not have talked to this person in this way. He would have not have said this. To get back on track. We were talking with someone recently who was going through a lot of suffering through self-created choices. And it was as though we could feel, we said to him essentially, yes, mistakes have been made. Don't identify with them. Move on and get back in attunement with the Guru. That will free you from the suffering. And so when we make a mistake, remember, God is within me, not that mistake that I made, and quickly get back in alignment. There was a man who was an Ananda village in America in the early years, and he was an odd fellow, but sincere, and he was with us for a while, and then he got pulled into negativity, and he was speaking very badly about Ananda and Swami and saying all these bad things about us. And then one day Swamiji was giving, and he was a big man, strong, he lifted weights, very big guy, and a little scary. And then one day Swami was giving a discourse, many hundreds of people were there, it was outside, and this man, Swami had given him the name Ram Leela. He was standing in the very back looking very ashamed, and Swami said, Ram Leela, and he went like that, and he had to walk down all this row with all these hundreds of people, and Swami said, you've been a bad boy, haven't you? And he said, yes, Swami, I've been a bad boy. A big man, and Swami patted him on the head, and he said, don't do it anymore. And he said, I won't, Swami. And he didn't. He wasn't a part of Ananda, but his life changed in very, very positive ways. So follow the Guru as much as you can, but know that the Guru forgives you in your mistakes. He doesn't judge you, because you are his very own. You are his child. And I think this is one of the most important things to remember in the Guru-disciple relationship, is how much the Guru loves each one of us, how precious each one of us is to him. Each one of us, just as we are, but also as we can become. And that he wants, all the Guru wants from you is your happiness in the deepest, most lasting way possible. And so when you start saying, Guruji, I'm tired of going by my own will. I'm tired of going by likes and dislikes. I want this, I don't want that. Oh, I don't want this to happen, I don't want that to happen. And Swami would often just break people of likes and dislikes. There were two women in the community at a certain point who just could not get along at all. And they were always arguing. And Swami said, okay, I want you two to work together as a team. And they just thought, what could be worse than this? But he had them working together. And they were able to break through quite a bit. And so try to remember that obedience to the Guru is not giving your will away to some disciplinarian or some mean boss, or living in attunement. The obedience of the disciple is understanding that the guidance of the Guru is not based on egoic likes and dislikes. The guidance of the Guru is based on divine wisdom and attunement with total unity with God. And if we can trust that, then we think, why am I resisting? Why am I holding on to, like the little girl, I like this and I don't like this and I don't want this and I won't eat that. It takes so much time and energy to establish and to fortify our likes and dislikes, doesn't it? If we can just say, I'm tired of all of that, let my will be in attunement with yours. And Sri Yukteswar said to Master, when I came to my Guru, Lahiri Mahashaya, he said, let me discipline you. And Sri Yukteswar said, why, sir? And he said, because the undisciplined human will only leads to suffering. It's only based in egoic likes and dislikes. And so my will, the Guru says, is not based on likes and dislikes, but only your highest happiness. And so the more we understand that, the more we say, please, Lord, let me intuitively perceive what you're asking me and give me the blessing of wholeheartedly, without any resistance, without any yes, but. That's what undermines us every time. Yes, but I know better. It'll kill you every time. We don't know better. In fact, we don't know much of anything. We're just kind of riding on old past karma until we get to the point where we say, take me in your charge now, guide my life. And so to accept the discipline, and then you could ask the question, but how do I know what my Guru is asking of me? He's not in the body anymore, or maybe he is, but in our case, Yoganandaji is not in the body anymore. Swamiji is not in the body anymore. Well, in a sense, even those who lived with Master had the same challenge that we do, because the Guru is not obvious. He wants us to perceive his will subtly within ourselves. And so we have to, it's our job to perceive intuitively what the Guru wants of us. Sometimes it's hard, but it's not as hard as we allow it, as we think it is, because we have within us, the Guru has a kind of a compass, and the direction is being shown. In the West, we have this game, I don't know if you play it, it's called Hot or Colder, and a group of children come together and you'll hide something. Let's say I'll hide it behind, let's see, what's something I could hide it behind? I'll hide it behind, I'll put it in Abhishek's backpack. And then one child is hiding their eyes, and then he comes and he's looking for this thing. And if he starts going away, the children say, colder, colder, colder. And if he starts going to it, they say, hotter, 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 burning, on fire. And then finally he can find it. Well, that's what the Guru does with us. He has placed divine happiness, unity with God. He's hidden it, but he's hidden it in our own hearts. Luckily, it's not in Abhishek's backpack, I don't think. And then we start going away, and he goes, colder, colder, colder. We start if we're going by egoic desires and likes and dislikes and self-will, and the Guru's saying, colder, colder, freezing. And then when we start opening up, warmer, warmer, until finally, he doesn't have to say it anymore. We know we have found it in our hearts. So the inner voice of the Guru, that's the essence of it all. Finding that voice, listening to that voice, following that voice, and then sharing that voice. Hearing it within your heart and soul. And this is how we deepen our attunement, and then to also finally make the commitment, Guruji, this lifetime, I give to you. I'm not going away. I'm not going to do this for 2 months or 2 years. I have made the commitment. And I will not break that commitment. And to continue till the end. And Master said, those who continue to the end, and he said, I don't just mean on a superficial level, but who earnestly seek to find spiritual freedom till the end. Master said, we give you this promise that I or one of the other of our line of masters will personally usher you at the moment of death out of this world of Sukha Dukkha Dham into the world of inner joy. That's a promise. And sometimes we have to say, Master, don't forget your promise. And they won't. Their commitment, they will never give up their job with us until we find what they came to give us. And so make a commitment, no matter what happens. If people disappoint you, if things don't go the way you like, say, I'm not going anywhere. Take it all away, but I stay. And the devotee who can say that, the disciple who can say that, that's one of the most important steps. To give your self-will to the Guru, to make a lifetime commitment to the Guru, and then to try to live in the Guru's love. Because at first, when we take up the spiritual path, it seems complicated, doesn't it? When we learn Kriya Yoga, it seems complicated. When we learn all the different aspects of Raja Yoga, it seems complicated. We met with a man the other day, and very nice man in Delhi, and he said, I just have one question. And we said, yes, what is that? And he pulled out the Raja Yoga book, and he had underlined hundreds of questions. And he said, it's so complicated. And maybe it is. Maybe the yoga philosophy is subtle and complicated. But as Master Sri Yukteswar said, God is simple. All else is complex. So don't get caught up in the complexity of the spiritual path. Ultimately, it's about loving God and loving the Guru as the instrument of God and learning to be a better and better disciple until there's no more separation. But the little spark of our soul becomes a part of the great light of God. And then the Guru has fulfilled his destiny with us, and we have fulfilled the destiny that God gave us with which we entered this world. So we have a little time now that we would like to invite, if you have questions that Jyotish and I can answer, or Jyotish alone can answer if they're hard questions.
I take the easy ones, she gets the hard ones.
Okay, there's a question right there.
I have actually 2 questions. One is related to the heart, I think. First question I want to ask is, why do I start weeping while listening to the song? And the second part of the question is, I want to know whether body organ relation is a viable path in our way.
With the body or?
Organ relation.
Donation of organs.
Oh,
I see.
Okay. I'll take the first part, you can take the second.
Okay.
Okay, why do you start weeping? You know, at the end of Swamiji's life, I mean, he was a brilliant lecturer for many, many decades. But at the end of his life, his lectures became very simple, and he just spoke of the Guru. And he could not mention his Guru's name without weeping. It's the heart becomes soft. The heart of the devotee becomes soft. And we recognize when we feel that vibration of divinity, when we look in, perhaps, come in. Maybe it's the guru. You never know. When we look in the eyes, sometimes you can look at Master's eyes, and maybe you've seen the picture 1,000 times, but sometimes there's something in his eye that you know is just for you. And I think it's that feeling of deep, deep personal response to something which is so beautiful and so filled with love. And that's another important aspect of the guru-disciple relationship. It's impersonal, but at the same time, the most personal experience you will ever have in your lifetime, transcending any human interaction. And so there's that feeling of a deep, personal connection with the most profound part of who you are, and the fact that you feel so completely accepted and understood. It's like we wander in a world of shadows and suffering, and then from time to time we feel God's presence and we feel, I am home. And that's why we weep.
As far as organ donation, these decisions have to be left to each individual. Some feel that they want to do this in order to help others, and others feel that it might interfere with the process of transition. What Master did say, and it's not he alone, many traditions have this, that there is a subtle connection between the body and the soul that lasts for 3 days after the soul passes out of the body. And in the Christian Bible, Jesus said, you can destroy this temple, but within 3 days I will rebuild it. And he was referring specifically to the soul exiting the destroyed temple, and then within 3 days he rebuilt it by reappearing to the disciples. So there is that time period, and I think you have to choose for yourself whether you feel intuitively that someone taking something, I suppose it really would depend on the amount of attachment you might still have to thinking of yourself as that body. If you have much attachment, then it's someone taking parts might awaken your vrittis, make you a little nervous. So I don't have a clear recommendation. I will say that I myself have chosen not to do an organ donation simply because of that's a very precious time of transition, and I don't want to do something that would interfere with that. But others may have a karma where that would actually be helpful. So make your own decisions about it, but there isn't any hard and fast teaching about it one way or the other. Okay, other questions?
Right over here. I think you just turned it off. It was on.
One is on the spiritual path, and as you
but you feel like a donkey. So how does one, where should one really draw that line? And like you're saying, attune to the guru, but you have to do that as well. How do you maintain that perfect balance? And I want to know where you really, you want to go on the path, but at the same time you have to,
Could you repeat the question?
Okay. The question is, we have these needs, we have these yearnings. We're like the donkey, we keep striving. But where's the balance? You want to be on the spiritual path. The more you can cultivate a state of non-attachment, then the easier that question becomes. So Swami suggested that every night before we go to sleep, we visualize a bonfire and we offer into that bonfire everything. Master said it's good to review the day and think of the various incidences of the day. Were you victorious in the sense of a spiritual consciousness during this incident, or was it more of an egoic consciousness? The more we can become detached, then the clearer it will be, because there's a difference between need and desire. Master said there are a lot of people chasing unnecessary necessities. And so, as I said about the millionaire who wanted to get richer than his rival, we were just talking with someone, a satsang a week or two ago, and essentially the same question came up. When will I know how much is enough? How much security, how much money do I need? How much of this, how much of that? When is enough enough? The more detached you are, the more it will become clear this is enough. But the more attached you are, the more that carrot is there. So the string that holds that carrot in front of your nose is the string of attachment. Cut that string of attachment, and you can decide when to stop or not to stop.
Also, we're very fortunate in that Yogananda's path is not for people who have renounced the world. It's for people living in the world. Really, he came to the West in 2 years, 2020. It will be the 100th anniversary of Yogananda coming to the West. And really, it's very, very important to understand that point, because he came to establish really a new approach to spirituality for our time. East, West, doesn't matter. The needs are the same. We need to have a way to use our talents or our skills. We need to earn a living. We need to get along with people. We need to take care of our health. All of these things, raise our children, etc., etc. But none of that is in opposition to this Yogananda's teachings. What are the basic teachings? He said our path is one of meditation and service. So to create in your life, even if it's 15 minutes a day, even if it's 10 minutes a day, really even if it's 5 minutes a day, but you have a practice of meditation, of relating to God every day, best morning and evening if you can. And then you go about your day, but as we were saying, don't just say, oh, I've got to earn money. See everything you do as service. I have a dharma in this world. I can't say, children, there's no food. We have we have no job. There's no food. We have no home. We go on the street. Of course we don't want to live that way. But to do everything we do with a sense of offering to God, I earn this money for my family in service to you, God, and with a sense of inner non-attachment. That's how we find freedom. And there's a very important paragraph in Autobiography where Master says the person with worldly obligations, if they do it with a sense of offering to God and non-attachment, this is a higher path than even the path of renunciation or leaving the world. And so it's important for everyone to understand that we've been given an approach, not just shallow, but an approach to finding God in the midst of our worldly responsibilities. This was what Yogananda brought to the world at this time, because it's what the world needs at this time. And so the question is asked often, but the answer is, it's important to understand this path is made for people just like all of us. Fulfill your worldly responsibilities, have time for your search for God, and never lose sight of what your real goals are. So it's an important question, and it's important to understand it. Okay, maybe one more question, and then we will have our RTM blessing. Everyone looks around. Who will ask the question? Okay, a hand goes up, a brave person. You can stand, it's easier.
It's in relation to what is that is turning towards the Guru. You related that anyway. So sometimes I know that if I turn towards the Guru, I'll get an answer. But somewhere I don't have the strength to follow the answer, so I don't turn towards the Guru.
Has anyone else ever done that? I have. So is that the question? Oh.
Yes. What should be done?
Okay, so she asked, should we just say it for the recording? We know if we turn to the Guru, we will get an answer, but sometimes I don't have the strength, or the willingness, I think is really what we're saying, to ask, because I'm not sure I will really follow what the Guru says. Okay, should I start and then you go?
You can start.
Okay, you can sit. Well, this is really a dilemma everyone faces. And I think the answer is simply it's all directional. We keep moving towards the Guru, we keep listening to him until we develop that confidence that if I go by my own will, I will not be happy. If I go by your will, I will find really what I'm seeking. But that takes building up trust. Just as when you form a friendship with a new person, you don't know at first, can I trust this person? How much can I share with this person? Will this person really honor my friendship? Will they not share what I tell them with other people? And so it takes time to build trust, even on the human level, all the more so on the divine level. So you just keep doing it as best you can, asking the questions that you know you can fulfill, you know you will obey, and then pushing a little bit. But really don't think you're unique in this. This goes every step of the way, because the more you practice kriya, the more you follow the spiritual path, the more deep things come up. Issues that have maybe been for our lifetimes that you have not dealt with. But now with the help of God and Guru, we can say, now I will do this. Now I will take this step. Once, Jyotish mentioned our son, once when he was little, some children were teasing him at school, and he came home and he was crying. And Jyotish was giving him wise counsel, and he said, you know, even if other people don't treat you nicely, you still have to be nice to them. And our little son thought about it and said, I don't want to be that kind of person, Daddy. And I don't want to take the high ground all the time. And don't we all think that? But little by little, we take it as we can, and then it's almost like building momentum. Then more and more you say, okay, Master, I've tried it my way long enough. It really hasn't worked. Let me do it your way. But don't feel guilty, because it's a long process.
I would say, quite simply, just do the best you can. That's the starting point. And then I would also say, use your willpower to push yourself a little out of your comfort zone. Not so far that you are likely to rebel, but a little bit. You know, the world has a certain kind of a law of momentum. That which is at rest tends to stay at rest. That which is in movement tends to stay in movement. That's a law in physics. And so the tamasic quality tries to pull us down and keep us at rest. And so we have to resist that, but not resist it so much that we finally rebel against that. Resist a little bit. I don't know if any of you have ever taken on an exercise program, but let's say that you have decided that you're going to take a walk for a half hour every day. What is the hardest step in that walk to take? The first one. The first step out the door. As soon as you step out the door, probably maybe the first 10 steps are hard, but then it gets easy after that. So if you say, well, I don't want to try, then you don't go out the door. Push yourself enough and say, I'll just at least take the first step. Then if I feel too rebellious, I won't go beyond that. But in your sadhana, in your relationship, in whatever the relationship is, push yourself enough to take one step, and then leave the rest to I don't know, your willingness. Okay.
I just want to add, sometimes in the morning, if I think, oh, the energization exercises, I don't want to do them today, I play a game with myself. I say, just do the first 5. And then you don't have to do any more. And once you do the first 5, then you want to do the rest of them. But you just play little games like that with yourself. Okay, so should we have Arti now? And